This guy is a high elf sorcerer. Now this guy is built for PvP, PvE and veteran dungeons and trials. So this is an all-rounder DPS. So this is a build you can have a lot of fun with. So moving into the character first, I have 51 points in the Magicka attributes bar and 13 points in the health. Again, because I'm a DPS and he's Magicka based, all my points near enough are in the Magicka attributes and a little bit in health just to keep myself alive. He has 47.4% spell critical and 19% weapon critical, but again the weapon is because I don't use any sort of two-handed axes or anything like that. I just use staffs with this character, destruction staffs. So it's a very, very good build. Moving in to the inventory, I'm going to do my gear first. So I use 5-piece Mother's Sorrow. And that's for the spell criticals, and I use 2-piece of the Stormfist monster set, and this is when you deal damage you have a 10% chance to create a Thunder Fist to crush an enemy, dealing 1900 shock every 1 second for 3 seconds, and to all enemies within 4 meters does an 8000 physical damage when the fist closes. So basically it picks up an enemy, crunches them, and when the hand releases it then does area effect of 8000 points. To any surrounding allies. And then I also use 5 points of Vicious Death, and that is mainly because, like I say, this is a PvP character as well. So having the 5-piece for when you kill a player, they violently explode for 17,800 damage, and damages allies all around them within a 4-meter radius. That is again because it's PvP. You can, if you wanted to, use 5-piece Overwhelming. And the 5th piece of that is when you activate a class ability, you have 15% chance to surround yourself within a torrent that deals 2000 shock damage to the closest enemy within 12 meters every 1 second for 6 seconds. So you have about 10,000 damage off that if you use the Overwhelming set. But like I say, I use Vicious Death for PvP and Mother's Sorrow for the PvE side of things with the damage, but it also helps in PvP as well. So that's the gear cupboard. Going into the skills, again, like I say, this is a PvP guy. So my first bar is a lightning bar. I use Lightning Flood. This is an area of effect. I use Unstable Wall of Frost because I have a frost staff for this character on the first bar. And this again is an area of effect, so you slam it on the floor in front of you and it's like a carpet of ice that then explodes and does area of effect damage. I use Frost Clench, and this is devastate an enemy with an enhanced charge from your staff, dealing 3000 frost damage and an additional 5000 frost damage over 8 seconds, and immobilises targets for 6.5 seconds. So again, great in trials and stuff like that, but mainly even better for PvP because it can stop the enemy in their tracks. Haunting Curse. This curses an enemy with a destructive rune, dealing 7000 magic damage to a target and 3000 magic damage to all nearby enemies after 3.5 seconds. The curse will continue to haunt the enemy and explode a second time, dealing 7000 magic damage to the target and 3000 magic damage to all nearby enemies for an additional 8.5 seconds. So basically you can fire this, it will stun an enemy and then deal damage to them and the people around them, and then it will go off again, stun the same person and damage enemies around them again whilst they're trying to get heals in. So again, great for PvP. Mage's Wrath. This is called down a lightning strike. This mainly kills the person that it lands on, but also does area of effect to the person or people standing next to them. That works on PvP and PvE, so it doesn't matter if they're player controlled or computer controlled, it does area of effect and crazy direct damage as well. I then use Greater Storm Atronach, and this calls in a electric bloke. This is the best way to describe him. It arrives and does 5000 shock damage and stuns enemies for 3 seconds when it comes in, and then the Atronach zaps the closest enemy for 3000 shock damage every 1 second, and it lasts 28 seconds. So that's a lot of damage. And an ally can stand near the Atronach and call Charged Lightning Synergy, granting the ally and the Atronach Major Berserk, increasing the damage done by 25% for 8 seconds. Moving on to the second bar, we have, this is mainly a PvP self-sustain bar. So this is Dark Conversion. This is an ability that you bargain with the darkness to restore 8000 health and 3600 Magicka instantly, and an additional 2400 Magicka over 20 seconds. So if you really need some health and Magicka fast, then you call this in basically. It costs stamina, so you need your stamina to call it in, and it gives you health and Magicka in return. Streak, you transform yourself into pure electric energy and flash forward, dealing 3,500 shock damage to enemies in your wake and stunning them for 1.5 seconds, and then casting again within 4 seconds costs 50% more Magicka. So I'd only use this once, do a lot of attacks, and then after 4 seconds I'll call it in again and get out of there. Then have rapid regeneration. I have a resto staff with this character for the self-heal. This self-heal is a very good one again to have for self-sustaining. So you share your staff's life-giving energy, healing you or up to 2 nearby allies for 12,000 health over 16.5 seconds. So if you need a health burst, or you need sort of like a regenerating health whilst you're fighting, you can call this in, that gives you that much health over 16 seconds. You then have Empowered Ward, which is conjure globes of Daedric enemy for protection. Grant a damage shield for you and your pets that absorbs 6,500 damage for 10 seconds. Damage shield strength is capped at 40% of your maxed health, so it won't protect you for 60% of your health, but it will protect you for the last 40. It also grants Mana Intellect to you and your nearby allies, increasing your Magicka recovery for 10% for 10 seconds. So again, that with Streak and Dark Conversion will get your Magicka back instantly, pretty much. I then use Ward Ally, which again is a resto staff ability, and this is a self-damage shield that I covered on the Templar. And again, it does an additional 300% protection, depending on the severity of your wounds. I then use Barrier, which is a PvP ultimate, and it's a very, very good skill to have. And this is basically a shield that you call onto yourself and your allies. It lasts 30 seconds and absorbs 29,000 damage. Obviously, the more levels you get that up, the more effective it's going to be. I have all the passives for the Destruction Staff, Dark Magic, Daedric Summoning, Storm Calling. I think I said Resto Staff. I also only use Light Armor with this character, so I have all the passives for Light Armor. I have all the Soul Magic passives. I have a couple Mage's Guild, but I don't really use it, so you don't really need to bother with it. I have nothing in the Undaunted, and again, I've only got the skill in Barrier from the support skill bar. You can have some passives into that, but it mainly only benefits you in PvP than it does in PvE. So if you're going to use this character in trials and dungeons, you don't really need to have the passives for these skills equipped. Also, again, as I'm a high elf, I've got all the passives for the high elf as well. Going into the champion with this character, I have 9 I can spend. Fair enough. Again, we're going to have that about 85. So 85 points in tenacity. This is for the Magicka regen after heavy attacks. Again, you're probably getting sick of me explaining these, but it's needed. So again, more points in tenacity to regain your Magicka and the stamina back from heavy attacks. Arcanist for the Magicka recovery. You don't really need many points on that because your tenacity is going to be working overtime with 2 staffs equipped. 60 points of Mooncalf for the stamina recovery, so I can call in my stamina recovery abilities. 26 points in health recovery, mainly used for PvP, so when you're running away you can get some health back on yourself if there's no healer nearby and your heals aren't doing enough to protect you. I then have 40% in tumbling, and this reduces the cost of roll dodge by 16%. So when you're trying to roll out the way of players or enemies, whatever, it costs you less stamina. So the more points in this, the better. Again, I'd cap it about 65, but this is only really needed for PvP, so you could, if you wanted to, take the 40 points out of this if you're not going to play PvP and put it into Tenacity, Arcanist and Mooncalf. Again, Tenacity can go up to 100%, so if you want the points to go to 100 you can, but I would probably split the 80 points between Mooncalf and Arcanist. Going into the Mage, we have the the Apprentice even. We have 100 points in Elemental Expert, and because I'm a shock-based character, 100 points in this is just ridiculous amounts of damage. Again, the same for Spell Penetration. Because I'm electric-based, all my Spell Penetration is going to be nuts. So to have an additional 5,500 pretty much on top of the damage I'm already doing is phenomenal. I then have 18 points in the Staff Expert. Again, this is for the heavy attacks. When I'm trying to get my Magicka back from heavy attacks, it will do more damage to the player. Again, I used to have Sword and Board, or just a two-handed on my second bar with this character, so I had Master at Arms, but you can take the points out of that and put it into Staff Expert, because you ain't going to be using melee weapons with this, you're going to be using staffs. Going into Thermatage, we have 48 points in this, and this is for the damage over time effects again. Again, I'd recommend putting up to about 65, I wouldn't go any higher than this. but this character is good enough for 48, so you probably could split the points again between Staff Expert. Actually, put more than Staff Expert pretty much. Going into the Warrior, we have 95 points in Ironclad, and this reduces the damage taken from direct damage attacks, and direct damage attacks mainly come from players, so the more points in that, the better. You don't really need it in Spell Shield or Resistant because you're going to be ridiculously powerful anyway with 98 points in Ironclad. Again, it's mainly based around PvP, this build, but you can, if you wanted to, split those 98 points down to about 70 and put the remaining into Spell Shield and Resistant. Going into the Lady, we have 30 points in Hardy, 30 points in Elemental Fender, and 50 points in Thick Skinned. Again, this is damage taken from damage over time effects. So again, cast by players pretty much. Reduced damage taken from physical poison and disease damage, again from players. And reduced damage taken from Flame Frost, Shock and Magic damage, again from players. So having some points in there is pretty good. You probably could take this down to about 40 points and then split the last 10 between these two, making 35. But again, I wouldn't go above 65 on these skills. And then going into the Warrior, we have 62 points in Bastion, and that's for the damage shields. I don't really say any more than that. That's all that's for. And I think that, like I say, is it for this character.